Welcome everyone. Hopefully you had a good weekend. I'm going to start by just reviewing all the resources that are available for preparing for our exam, which will be on Wednesday. Right. So we moved it from Friday to Wednesday. And again, if anyone has schedule conflict or something, talk to me and we'll work something out. So first of all, we've got all this second exam is only over the content from the second exam or second that we've been covering after the first exam. So matrices and probability. Counting is part of probability, although some of the questions are specifically just counting. I did, I guess back up a little bit. I did receive the exam, when was it? Thursday evening, Friday morning, sometime. I can't remember. Maybe it was after Friday's class. Yeah, I think it was just shortly after Friday's class. So I did compare it. I have from Friday what we went over this review. There's some multiple choice questions in there. That one dealt primarily with the counting and probability. So those are some good additional questions to kind of go through, and they fit with what we've been doing. So they've got the right content. As I saw the exam, I wanted to focus on getting, I highlighted, so let's come here, the questions that you really, and I apologize for the color, I left my other connector, and this connector doesn't look so good. The recording will be true to color. This is kind of wonky, I can't fix it. So what I did is I replaced the exam review with the highlighted exam review. And there are particular questions which are highlighted, which are definitely work these. And if you work these, you will know, if you work all of the highlighted ones, oh shoot, I have to, you work all of the highlighted ones, you will have all of the content knowledge that is necessary. Let's see, we come back here. And then what I did is once I did that, I went and made solution videos for all the highlighted ones. So focusing first on the counting, or no, on the matrices part, I did make some adjustments. The coordinators allow us to adjust up to 20% of the questions, which I did. There was one on Cramer's rule. I kept the question, but removed the need to do Cramer's rule because we didn't, we have two other methods, and even the book itself says those two methods are pretty much identical. One sometimes might be a little easier to use than the other, but if you've got one of them, you'll get the right answer. Cramer's rule is just another third method. So anyway, I adjusted the question so you don't have to use Cramer's rule, and so forth. So there's these questions here. So definitely, if you haven't already, work through the highlighted ones, number 4, and so forth. Okay. It's not that the other questions are not important, but some of them we won't necessarily, if I didn't highlight it, it means you won't be out anything if you don't do it. If you do it and it's similar to the highlighted ones, it'll help you with it. But I'm very careful. I make sure side by side that I highlight everything that needs to be done. And if there is something additional, I'll add it. So then this was, what was this? First half of the question. So this was, yeah, I used this sort of little PowerPoint to go through. There's the instructions here. I even did an introduction video and just kind of, went over the test part, make sure you fill these parts in, that kind. So that's what the intro to the video is to kind of get you set for the exam. And then I went through each of the solutions for them, and then did the same thing for counting and probability, which we went over pretty thoroughly on Friday. Okay, but these are the ones, the highlighted ones. If you do them, you will it will address everything that needs to be done. And I just, like, even with showing the work, I even model that in here of how I would do it when I use the calculator. Still write kind of what you're doing. I'm taking matrix A times matrix B, but I did it with my calculator, right? So that's all in there. I added all up the times. It's about an hour and a half of videos. I would highly recommend watching all of them. Even if you don't have a question on one of them, again, I'm modeling how I would do it on the exam. So you might pick up a few little tips or pointers that will be helpful. And they're kind of one after the other. So, and some of them are shorter, 4 minutes, some are a little bit longer. You could watch them at twice the speed, or maybe not quite that fast. I have, but I usually do 1.75 when I'm taking some graduate courses as well, and I watch them at least 1.5 speed. Normal speed is like too slow now, right? Because there's too much, people put spaces between words. We don't need those spaces. We just get it done. So you could get it done in 45 minutes, right? Almost. So, but I think it would be important to just at least passively view them. Some of them will be, hopefully they're helpful. But that's, after my adjustments, the exam is matches this pretty good. Another question, just because of transparency, I did change one of them. It had a Venn diagram with 3 circles, which we have not done, right? We've done one with 2 circles, and it had it like it was 10 points. It was half the points for the whole problem. I looked through, our curriculum doesn't say that you'll be able to use a Venn diagram. It's a tool, and we never really went into teaching you directly. We did it with the two to show how it could be helpful. So I just changed the problem over from one of our, from the test bank, and did it with a 2-dimensional, a 2-circle one, like we've practiced. And that's really what we need to do. So it was kind of like, that was one question that I think was different from there wasn't even in the homework like that. So I'll bear that one, but I was within my 20% leeway there. So so again, I made the exam is very, very close to this. And some are multiple choice, some are fill in the blanks, some are show your work. And again, I do, knowing which ones are show your work, throughout these, I mention how I would show my work on an exam, and still use my calculator for it. Okay, it's like, you don't have to show that 2 + 2 really is 2 + 2. You don't have to prove that to us. But you're right, you took 2 + 2 or whatever, and the answer is sufficient. So questions, any questions? Okay. Let's see, go through these slide decks. Yeah, when I was doing the slide decks, I put the question, and if you click through it to kind of practice, these are the highlighted questions, so you could actually put it away. When you click on it the second time, you get I put the answer there so it's a slideshow, and you can work it and then just click it and you get your answer, so you don't have to flip back and forth. So this is a slide deck with, again, question and this one I also showed what would happen if it was 0 = 0. So sometimes I expanded them just so that you knew all the possibilities. So again, this question by itself is good, but it didn't cover the prospect of how do you write it when it's dependent, and so I went through that. Determinants, again, I show you how to do it by hand. With a 2x2, it's not too hard. 3x3, we use the calculator. We're not gonna, there is a way you could do it by hand, but it's too much. So again, each of these, as you keep clicking, you end up getting the answers there. And again, there are solution videos for all of these. And then if you go here, it goes to my Google deck, and it'll do the same thing here. If you go to slideshow view, it will actually work through all of or give you the the highlighted ones, and then it gives you your answer. So you could use these to kind of work through questions. Again, here's all this. Again, there's also videos on each of these. Okay. So let me actually download this. There's also an instruction sheet you can take a look at, just if you want to read it in advance, so that, you know, but it's pretty much like the last one. But if you read over it, then that way when you come to the exam, you don't have to spend time reading over it. Okay. Actually, I don't like it this way. Let's... So first I'll ask if you've had questions on any of the highlighted ones that you maybe saw the video and it still wasn't clear. I checked, it was limited. I mean, I got them all posted by Saturday afternoon, so you may not all have had the chance to look them over yet. Okay. How about any questions? So let's go over the matrices since we're here. Any questions on question 1, 2, 4? E for number 1. It's on the video, but the reason I have that highlighted is primarily for the transform. There's not one as complicated as that, but I'll do a few of the first few steps. And so let's... Sure. Let me do this. This one doesn't work. Let's see if I can... Okay, so what we're going to focus on is B transform. Now, if it was all numbers, you could do this in your calculator. You enter the matrix, and there's a function with the little t, and you do it. The transform is just, all it's going to do is it's going to take every column and turn it into a row, and every row and it switches the columns and rows. So in this sense, for the B, the reason I did this one is because there's an X, and there is a need on the test to do that. So that's the other thing is, you know, I'm being transparent. You need to know how to do this. If you don't know how to do it, you're going to come to that question. You're not going to know how to do it. So to transform B, what we need to do is take this column and turn it into a row, and the next column, 1, 0, turn it into a row, and the last column, 1x, and turn it into a row. So now it is a 3 by 2 matrix. Okay, and I don't remember covering that with any depth, or even mentioning, except to say, oh, there's a button, you can do it, and we're fine. Most of the homework, we had stuff where we could just do it. Okay, the reason we need to do this, though, is because we're going to multiply it by C. So then there's this here, we could, when we're doing by a scalar, we just multiply everything by 2. And then we're going to multiply it also by matrix C. Oops. Right? And that's sort of similar to what you're going to be doing in the test. The reason you need to transform it is so that you can do the multiplication. Okay, so and there's a variable in there, and I debated, but the way the question was asked, that was sort of important, so I left it. Some of them I replaced the variables by numbers so that you could just use your calculator. I think I did that on 2 of them. But there's still 2 that have a variable in there. So this is a 3 by 2, and C is a 2 by 2. So remember this to tell whether we can multiply these middle 2 numbers as we put them together. They have to be the same to multiply. And then what it tells us, if we're going to get a 3 by 2 matrix, is going to be our answer. So it'll be a 3 by 2. So you can make, that's how it's going to look. And again, I do go through the process of multiplying 2 matrices by hand. We do that with C, so A times B. So I do that pretty methodically. Again, it's the row, so it's left to right. So I'll do it. It's row times column. Okay, row times column, and then you go through. But watch the video for A times B. That'll get the multiplication. The video for C, all I do is I talk about that transform, because that's another skill. So if you have those 2 skills, able to multiply 2 matrices and able to do a transform with a variable in there, and I do it with those 2 questions. But it's pretty straightforward, and those 2 are not too long. So I would definitely watch those, because we talked about it when we introduced this way back at the beginning. But most of the stuff we did in the homework, we were able to do without doing it by hand. But at least the ones by hand are fairly short. They're either a 2 by 2 or they're fairly small matrices. Those are doable. Yes, sir. Yeah, the calculator will not address it. Now, I do mention I cheated a little bit. When I did this, I replaced the x with a 2. And if if I don't know if I can't remember this one, but another one I did just to see what happens. And like on the transform, you could definitely see the transfer. The calculator will do the transform, and then you just say, I put that 2 there, or put whatever number you want. I replace that with an x. So that you can do. So you can sort of do some workarounds, but the calculator needs all numbers. So occasionally you could just put that in there and say, okay, these ones I'm gonna have to do, but the ones that were all numbers are okay. But no, it won't. You can't put x in there. If you do, what the calculator reads is there's always something. It's a variable. There's something stored in x. It puts whatever number stored in x. So, but again, that's kind of limited. But there are a couple. I'll say there was a few more, but there are still a couple where they have the matrix, smaller matrix though, with a variable in it, because they want to see that you know how the multiplication. So I think that was part of it. My fear was I didn't want you doing large. There are no large matrices in this thing. So it was kind of, I would have worked more towards applications, but this is what we went for. So that's how does that help? Yes. To a, okay, because when you take a squared, you're going to take a times a. Let's see, where's a? Here's a. So you're taking 1, 2, 3 x times 1, 2, 3 x. And remember, if you look at D, it looks like, oh, you just square each of these, but that's not how it works with a matrix. Think about FOIL. When you square something out, it's not just this squared and this squared. There's a middle term that gets, so that's kind of what's going on with the matrix. There's more multiplication going on. And again, on the video, I actually carry out the multiplication so you see why they aren't the same. They're the same size, but the other one, you end up with some like 1 minus x squared, and you end up with, it's not exactly the same. So just think, because matrix multiplication is, go this way, row times columns as you go down. Okay. and there are no true or false questions, so it's not like that's a type of question, but there are multiplication type questions. And so I want you to definitely know how to at least multiply a 2 by 2. It's not that hard, but you have to do it a few times. And I have to I have to go back. Okay, is it columns? You know, it's easy to mix these things up with matrices, right? Row times column, row times column. Okay. 4 is 1 Gauss-Jordan reduction. I would use, you can use any method, but I would use the RREF, and in the video I do. So use an augmented matrix, use the features of your calculator to do it. And again, I show as I did things. Some of them I knew were just fill in the blank. If it's fill in the blank, you just have to put the answer in, right? And so in that case, we just put what is X, what is Y, we solve for them. But if it's one of the last 3 questions where they ask you to do something like that, then you show here, I entered this matrix as A, this matrix as B. No, this one, I did an augmented matrix. You should, since it's given to us as equations, I would actually, your work would be showing the matrix you put in your calculator. It's not good enough to just say, I put it in the calculator, and well, what did you put in the calculator? So show me what you put in, the matrix, and that you used RREF. Put a button around it if you want. And then it produced X equals this, Y equals that. Or you could put the little matrix it produced. You could put it in reduced row echelon form, but then put the answer. So that's work. That's work. We're using technology, and we're showing how we use the technology. Does that make sense? Okay. I think that's as important. Because again, we're in your careers, you're going to be using a lot of technology. It doesn't mean we don't have some sort of back work of what we put in that technology. Sometimes screenshots are good because then we know what exactly, because if we make a mistake of what we put in and from our paper to here, sometimes that's good. But we need some sort of backwards of, oh, I just put it in the computer. What did you put in the computer? Okay. So far, so good. Let's see. So those, and then 6, the primary thing I did with 6B was because they gave us a reduced row echelon form, and then how do we write the answer? So 6 goes with 4 because the question you get may not have a solution, or not have a single solution. It may have a dependent solution. So how do you write that? Or it may not have a solution, like in this case, because this gives us 0 equals 1, which is not true. So that's a no solution. Okay, so I started with that, but that's kind of boring to just say, okay, yeah, I see that's no solution. And then I also said, well, what if we had, instead of a 1 on this last one, what if this last part here were a 0? Then this is true because 0 equals 0. Then it's a dependent matrix. And then I walk through how to write your answer as a dependent matrix. Okay, you solve one for, in this case, we end up solving, the middle is Y and Z. X has an answer, it's a number. So I think I did it both ways, dependent on Z and dependent on Y. So you can kind of choose either one. Again, if it's open answer, I'll take either one, as long as you get, if you make it dependent on Y and it asks for dependent on Z, I'll still give you full credit. Just get it dependent on one or the other. Okay, so again, the video on that is there. Determinants, for the 2 by 2, I do it both by hand and with the calculator. And because by hand it's just diagonals, multiplying the diagonals and subtracting them. With the 3 by 3, it's not on the test anyway, but I did it just to show that that's the one I would definitely use the calculator. And the DET on your calculator is the determinant. Incidentally, I never got to making videos with the Casio. If you have a Casio and you needed something, but also I hadn't heard anybody, so it's kind of like the squeaky wheel gets the grease or something like that. And so didn't seem to be any squeaky wheel. But if you need help with the Casio calculator, I can help you, but it's been a while since I used, like with matrices, I have to go back and research it, and I just needed to make all these other resources. So just want to be transparent there, that if you need it, let me know, but because we got a couple days, but I'm assuming you've done well. And then for like 7, 8, and 9 are related. So I did this. So these are all work together. And basically the idea that an inverse will exist if the determinant, if the determinant is 0, it does not have an inverse. But you can also find it another way by plugging in, asking for the inverse. It gives a undefined. Okay, so again, the video goes through that. And then 9 is how to find them. Again, I would use technology. We have the inverse, and so I walk through with the TI-84. These are the key presses. These are what gets it done. Okay. 12 is more just it's a multiple choice thing. It's a setup. And so I did 12 first, and then I went back and did 11 because 11 is they want you to use that matrix inversion method, which again is going to give you the same answer as the reduced row echelon form. So again, you could use either one of those, but there is a question that's phrased that you have to understand about the matrix inversion method. And so if we've got an equation like this, a matrix time that the X matrix is the variables X and Y, and that we have to take the inverse of C. So this is a little bit of algebra. Take the inverse of C, but remember, when we multiply matrices, order is important. So if we're multiplying from the left on one side, we have to multiply from the left on the other. It's not, and so that's why we multiply both sides by the inverse of C. And again, I discuss why this one is correct. This is not correct. This is not correct. You don't take the inverse of D. You have to take the inverse of C, so it ends up on the other side. And then the order is very important of that. Okay, so you're going to need that piece of information. You're going to have to know that. And then there will be one that asks to use the matrix inversion method. And again, it's just more about setup. So we could do this with the Gauss-Jordan method. We could do it with Cramer's rule, but this method, this particular matrix inversion, involves writing three matrices. So we write the coefficient matrix of 3 and 6, 2 and -1. So those are the coefficients in front of the variable. Those get multiplied by the variable matrix, X and Y. And then it's equal to what I call the answer matrix, which I also, again, in the video, I show how to set this up like this. And then what we do is we take the matrix, I don't know what we'd call this. We could call this, I guess, since we're using C and D. So to solve this, we take the inverse of C, right, times D, and we do that on our calculator. Okay. It will give us the same answer as if we did the reduced row echelon form with an augmented matrix. And again, I show both methods so you can get there. Again, you can just know that this matrix, that this is part of the little nugget of information we want you to have. Because again, you may get somewhere where that's the way they use it for solving. And again, these matrices actually can be very powerful tools when we have a lot of variables. And again, I wish we would have, if you take a course on linear algebra, that's what they do, but they do it a lot by hand. But they get in larger matrices and solving problems that are, we could do a whole class on that. And but again, it would be maybe in a particular field. So some of you might be able to use those. How are we doing so far? Is it sort of making sense, or at least getting direction of where you need to go. And again, just for transparency, I've had a couple contact me. What I am doing is the makeup. I'll have a makeup exam Monday after class during office hours. So if you get close, and you're all stressed out, and you could use the extra time. Again, I don't want everybody to come, but probably not everyone's going to come. But just for transparency, we can make that happen. Okay, and I have, what I'm going to do this time is I will extend the homework all the way through to the end, although so it's up to you. If you haven't gotten a lot of it done or something, you'll have more time. But when we get to, remember, the last stuff for test 3, you need to keep on track with that, because test 3 is going to be something different than test 1 or test 2. We're not having a cumulative final. So the best thing is to get it all done before the test or shortly after. I mean, that's the best. But again, there are some questions in there that we're not necessarily testing you on, so that's okay. Right now, I would not focus on homework. I would focus on these highlighted questions. Because if you go through those and learn these, then you'll do well on the test, which is the largest part of your grade. You'll have time to make up homework later and learn it at a maybe deeper level. So I'll do that with you. And the first set of homeworks, if anybody wants those open, I'm happy to do it. It's just I have found if I left them open, people would work on them, and then they'd be behind on this as well. And so I wanted you to just kind of keep moving forward. Yes. It'll be due on May 2nd. So I'm going to, probably when I get home today, because otherwise I'll forget, I'm going to go ahead and extend it all the way so that the due date will say like May 2nd. So you don't have to worry about that. But if you get it done, go to the homework and look for questions that are similar to this. Those are the ones that would be important to work. If they're not similar to these, I'd wait till maybe the weekend or next week or whatever you want to do. Yeah. And as far as grades, I do go back and I copy all of them. So if say 3 weeks from now you get one done, it will get picked up eventually on my weekly updates. But again, the homework's only, I can't remember, 10 or 15%. So each one's not going to make as big of an impact as doing well on the exam. Exams are 3 of them. They're like, I think, a total of 80%, 70%. So whatever, there's 25. I think they're 25% each or something like that. Don't quote me. Look at the syllabus, but they're a big portion. So these are the thing that'll help you best is to do well on the test, and this is the thing to focus on at this point. And my way of doing that is saying, don't worry about the homework. I'm going to push off due dates, because if there's a due date there, then you're stressed about that, and you're stressed about studying for the test. And when I get stressed, I close down and I just can't do much, and I sit and I get in fetal position and go to sleep. That's what happens. So I try to reduce the stress as much as possible, because I don't want you shutting down on us. I want you engaging. These last ones are kind of ones we went over on Friday as well. So we did that kind of activity, and hopefully you found it helpful to kind of have a minute to think about it and try to get a solution, and then we went over it. So that's in Friday's lecture, and I think I've got that posted, and there's a resource for those. Combination, but for these parts, really what we're doing a lot of is using the calculator's feature of calculating a combination or a permutation. We just have to determine whether order is important of a factor, or whether order is not a concern, like marbles in a bag. How we choose the order we choose them in. 21 orders definitely important. There's the first, second, third. It's ordered, so that's important. So I go through those. Rolling a fair die, that's on the test, and I go through. That's a good video to watch, because I show a method that I used to use all the time, where instead of showing the two dice, the ordered pairs, I actually show the sums. And I remember when I did that, it was a lot clearer to me. Dang, why did I do this the first time? Well, anyway, so watch it. I make a little matrix with 2, 3, what they add to, and it makes it a lot clearer how to do this type one. Because you'll have one, basically it's the same thing, except what number are they asking the probability of. So just kind of remember that overall pattern or how to recreate it. And if you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, you can make up this matrix. And again, watch the video. I take you through it. That, if anything else, that's a good one. 23 definitely has something new. And that's why I did them as individual little short videos so that you can just jump to it. So watch 23 for sure. And then 25 is the one, there'll be one like that where you have to make a Venn diagram. So I go through that. And again, it's helpful in this system this way. 24 was done with the formula method, but you could also do it with a Venn diagram. And then 27. The last section, we've done several of these. I do all of these. So pulling a marble out of a bag. And again, you'll see it's just about using the calculator's combination feature, but setting up that fraction. And again, I go through each of these. And then just remember something like not all green. Well, we calculate they're all green, and then subtract it from 1 is the easier way to do it. So there's a couple, but I did go through all of these. And if you sort of understand the setup for all of those, you'll be just fine. But that's really the exam. They have questions that are some almost identical. I mean, it'll be this pretty much this question, but the number of red, green, and blue, whatever, will change total. That's all that changes. But the question's pretty much the same, and it'll be one of those, all one color, this color and that color. So watch that one. And again, that one ended up, because it's got multiple parts, I think it ended up being like 16 minutes long. So, but it's a valid one. And basically it gets you if you go to the homework is like 6 questions that are very similar to this, but I think they give you this and they only ask 1 or 2 of these. So it'll also help you get through the homework, because that's all that homework was marbles. Okay. I'm already tired, so. Anything else? So Wednesday, I will be here early, starting at 7:30. Come on in, and again, we're supposed to be able to do it in about 50 minutes. I think if you're prepared, that's completely doable. Could be done in probably less time if you're really ready. Not that it has to be rushed or anything. If we can come, and my goal is, I know if you go through these, you watch each of these and practice. And here's my, actually I talked to, I taught in Kazakhstan for a year, and a good friend of mine was, he was a Kazakh teacher who went to school in Finland. But I mentioned to him, I says, I got this idea that if you work it 3 times, the student will understand. So the first time you work together with somebody, second time you kind of, each person works a little bit, the student does a little bit, and the third time the student does all the work and the teacher watches, or the tutor. Says that's sort of, and he told me, he said in their culture, one of their poets says, yes, after the third time a matter is determined, or something like that. So, oh, cool. The poet from 300 years ago came up with this too. So I'm in good stead. So you really do. So just don't think, oh, I saw it, because I'll do this sometimes. I understand that, and then you go to do it, you don't, because you didn't practice it yourself. Someone gives you directions on how to get to their house. Oh yeah, I'll remember that. And you start driving, and go, oh, I forgot if I'm supposed to take a left or a right. You have to do it. You have to learn by doing. So watch it, but then try to find these questions. And again, there's some similar ones in the homeworks and stuff. Try to work a few on your own and see how you do. But again, you don't have to know everything, but the more you know, the better you do. And these are if you do these, you will be fine the whole test through. You will know how to get a good start on everything. All right. Well, I'll start office hours a little early if there's no further questions, and give you the time because, again, you have to be in the driver's seat. You have to be doing it. But we've got the supports. If over the next time, tomorrow I just have one class up in the afternoon. So contact me if you still have questions. I can help with something. Um, we'll get you there. Okay. But awesome.